to another episode of Craft Stories. And today I'm talking to Scott Schiller from the Thoroughbred Spirits Company, and they help craft distillers achieving their goals in the spirits business. And Scott is going to start with a presentation taking us through the pandemic that's going on at the moment and what does it mean worldwide for craft distillers. Scott.
Hello, everybody. My name's Scott. I'm with Thoroughbred Spirits Group. We are a firm dedicated to helping new and existing distilleries grow and get to the next level. Excited to chat with you because I know many of you are thinking about starting a distillery, already started a distillery, about to open up a distillery. And what do we do with these times today? And I'm going to share some insight about what is happening today, what I think might happen in the future, and how you can prepare for it. And my purpose today is to really share a real-time perspective of the industry. I'm really here to be helpful, to give you a little color and background. I've owned 2 distilling businesses. My first one didn't work out. My second one did. So I know firsthand the risks of this business. I understand what it's like to have a sleepless night, to worrying about cash flow and making ends meet, and all the effort and energy that you've put forth may have potentially been in the wrong direction. And how do you get through this? And so I have great empathy for you, and I want to give you some insight that I think that could be really instrumental in seeing you through this. So we're going to talk through a couple of key points, but just to give you a little color on us and our perspective, we're a firm that's a little over a decade old. We've helped build 30 distilleries, launched 50 brands, and brought 3 companies to exit. We work throughout the US and Europe and UK, and we cover every facet from feasibility studies to financing, packaging design, master distiller services, so creating liquids, distillery engineering, so all the sourcing and creation of the equipment and distillery function of the building, and the ongoing strategic advisory. And so we have a really 360 perspective of this segment, and we only work on spirits, so this is all we do. And so I'd like to share with you what we're able to gain from that perspective. So most of our work is in the artisan or craft movement, so husband and wives who look to start, or existing businesses looking to get to the next level. Okay, so a couple of things. What is going on in the industry landscape pre and post pandemic? What are the unique opportunities that have presented themselves because of this? And what could be the path forward? How should you be viewing and perhaps thinking about coming out of this? So starting off with some industry insights, talking about the on-trade, bars, restaurants, etc. What are they experiencing? What is going on? And certainly we know a lot about these things of the closure rates. And in the restaurant world, it is the greatest failure rate of any industry segment. Low barriers to entry, everybody eats mindset. There's some people who really, really great operators. We have a bad location or a faulty concept, or just bad business experiences. And then there's people who have really not an insight on how to really operate, looked at it more from fun or hobby. Now this is a really challenging time. The good times have stopped flowing. And so we have an incredible amount of closure rates. And typically, about 20 to 30% of your sales will come from the on-trade. But that's where the majority of your brand experience happens. So when the closure rate is affecting this segment, not only is it heartbreaking from the individuals and people who are really hospitality driven, which I refer to as another way of love, it's detrimental to see that they can't connect, that they can't find a way around the situation. However, with the on-trade, they are the most entrepreneurial and creative individuals I know. And many of them have come up with really, really clever ways to keep a lot of what their traditional operations were like, and have done all they can to really connect. But unfortunately, the closure rates for that segment have been incredible. Those that are open, the consumer experience is just not the same often, unfortunately. A lot of that beautiful hospitality is just restricted, and for safety reasons. But the amount of the environment, how meals are prepared, how they're served, the extents of interaction that they get to have, the consumer experience is different. And when you start to diminish that, for lack of better words, emotional connection, the people's desire to pay premium dollars for what are often required for our type of products tends to wane. And with that, you're seeing a slight edge down in consumer confidence. Not as much as we would have thought, but there are people who are still holding on to their dollars. So instead of spending $100 out in a meal twice a week, maybe that's gone down to twice a month. LMF. LMF stands for Legal Marketing Funds, which is a great term created by, I'm sure, a marketer. But essentially what it is that these are funds that a supplier has the ability to give to a on-premise account. It works for off-trade as well, but it's primarily on-premise driven. So for example, if you walk into an account and you notice that every single cocktail is made with one supplier's brand, chances are they're not that in love with the brand individually. They love the checks and support that comes with it. And so as the amount of accounts that are going to be relying on such support have increased, accounts that normally would have not partaken in such events or really picked products based on merit, that's going to be really hard to turn down. We'll talk a little later, but suppliers have war chests of dollars, and the ability to help an account out is going to be really tempting when that LMF fund might give them an extra rent free of 2 months or pay their rent for 2 months. Talking about the off trade, we've all seen the incredible amount of sales that are offsetting. It's not a 1-to-1 ratio for most brands, but bars and restaurants on trade, liquor stores, retail shops off trade. And so they know that they have greater leverage. They have the ability to work on even greater margins, to ask for more things from suppliers, and to be such a reliant perspective. They're using that to their advantage, and rightfully so. There's nothing malicious about their behavior, but just knowing that a lot of those relationships are being tied up. In addition, their ability to want to try new things, because often you could do a sampling or wanting to try a new campaign that is being featured, that's being hindered. Lack of ability to do in-store tastings, and more importantly, their desire to risk their dollars, even though their business may be doing very well on products that people haven't heard of or going to require extensive hand selling, they're holding that back. They're using those extra dollars to fill up on more of the traditional goods to have even better margin and better in-stock handling. So what's happening? That's in the trade. What's happening with distributors? The small to mid tiers, and forgive me, before I go on, I should say that while some of this may be coming across rather cold or heartless, that is not at all my approach. Again, I'm super cognizant that these are human beings behind these businesses. My perspective of being so direct is not to sugarcoat anything, so you can make informed decisions. So please, if I'm coming off to you negative or cold, that's not at all. I really want to be helpful, and I really want to see this work out. But at the same time, I don't want to mislead you, and that's also disingenuous. So, off my soapbox. Distributors, small to mid-tier weakness. The smaller distributors, on average, tend to be heavy wine books. And as we know, we had imports and duty taxes that were increased pre-2020 due to airline disputes, airline manufacturer disputing. So they were already a bit anemic because their traditional wines were carried at a 25% premium. In addition, most of these small to mid-tier distributors really benefit from the on-trade. And as we mentioned earlier, a lot of those accounts are just disappearing. So the ability for them to compete financially is really at risk. Unfortunately, we know of a few small to mid-tier distributors who have closed, as well as some of the very, very slow payments, 90, 120 days, 180-day payments from really small companies. Also, just to be cognizant that I know some of our viewers may be from the UK and Europe, et cetera. In the US, we have a 3-tier system, so you can be the supplier, the distillery, you sell to a distributor sells to retailer. That's not required in all other countries, but even if you go through a wholesaler and let's say for the UK, et cetera, a domestic importer, a lot of the same theories apply. We just call them distributors here in the US. The conglomerate focus, knowing that the incentives or commissions that these larger companies, Diageo, Beam, Pernod, et cetera, will pay them, has allowed them to focus more because as their salespeople and their businesses are also at risk, they're trying to make sure that they're investing and putting their effort behind companies that know can pay them. So the last thing a distributor wants to do is lose a conglomerate during these times, because that's literally keeping the light on. So the amount of effort and energy that they're placing towards these larger brands is even greater than it was before. Translation is often even less focus or even purchasing of inventory from some of the smaller to mid-tier suppliers. Greater consolidation. In the US, we've had extensive consolidation. That's also happened around the world. Distributors are being linked together or purchased by larger organizations. With this anemic time, the ability to buy distributors that weren't for sale before may now be for sale, not to mention the purchase price for them will be different, lower. So I think you're going to see even greater power happen to the second tier. With this comes this concept of brand grabs. We've seen this a lot too. Let's say a small to mid-tier distributor or even a larger one has a really nice brand that a distributor would like to get. They have the ability to go to them now with the benefit of saying, hey, we will make sure we pay your invoices on time, not to mention we'll hit your numbers. So if you're a export manager from France and you're looking at the US or another country and saying, gosh, I love my distributor, but my business is down 20%, not sure what the future looks like. And a larger company says, hey, I'll guarantee you hit your number. That's a hard thing to turn down as well. So what's happening now with suppliers, distilleries? So in the conglomerates, many of them are doing very, very well. And even if their numbers are down, their net revenue is down, let's just say the maximum of 10%, you have to think about how profitable they are, because they're not spending anywhere near the amount of money in marketing, and they're not spending anywhere close to what they used to in terms of travel and entertainment. So even if they're flat, which many are, if not a few points up, the profit they have is incredible. Now, what that means is that they have all these extra dollars. Let's be honest, they did to begin with. That's how they got there, and that's one of the advantages of this industry, what we all hope to achieve. But their ability to come out swinging when this starts to subside is something to take note of. They're providing even greater pressure, as we talked about, not only on the accounts, but also on the distributor. So now they have even greater influence, because they can say, listen, I know you've been trying to grow this smaller whiskey brand or gin brand, but they may not be in business in 12 months. We've been in business for 100 and some odd years and are publicly traded. Who are you going to put your effort and energy behind? Lower acquisition values. Some of us enter this space for the reason of being acquired, and that's a great reason, by the way, to enter this space. Not the only reason, but a reason. And the ability, what's happening in the M&A space is valuations are lowering. We have 2 brands for sale right now, and what they are being received for offers is probably a point or two in revenue multiple, net revenue multiple below what they may have received 12 months ago. Just different time. So even the value of the businesses are diminishing. In the mid-tier, these are businesses that are probably doing 200,000 to 400,000 9-liter cases. So it's a really nice size business. They're probably in this no man's land of waited out and trying to really survive. They may be acquisition because the offer may be great from a conglomerate. Same thing with the distributors buying a smaller mid-tier distributor. But they may also need to merge. Their business may not be able to survive 24 months of such an activity, or depending on their board, they may be looking to find efficiencies to hold themselves up so they don't lose position. So again, partner alliance. What does it mean for the craft artisanal? Again, I take no pride in saying this, but there's likely to be less competition in the next 12 to 24 months. Many of the distillers survive because of their on-site sales or their on-site tasting room, which has beautiful margins. It's the best marketing medium in the world for a distiller to your home place to have such a great experience. But even if your market is open, you're not having as many people come through the door. And so that's a lot of profit that's missing. And so the businesses who were heavy focused within their four walls, they're hurting. They're hurting badly. And the reality is surviving 6 months with negative cash flow and going from a contribution margin of probably a blend of 70, 80%, now back down to a blend of 40, 50, that's not a big change that many financial models can accommodate. Distribution difficulty. It's really hard right now to find an account, bar, restaurant, or distributor or retailer who's willing to take on new products. Again, no matter where they are in this tier or this channel, their businesses are on the more anemic side. And willingness to try a new product that's untested, that really can't be supported, that risk tolerance is much lower. So actually gaining distribution or growing is a challenge at the moment. Even tighter localization, as companies start to rescind, let's say it's a Parisian distiller that was looking to do work in the UK and Germany, and maybe they had a person or two or worked with a domestic importer in the US, they're pulling back those funds. And so they're going to come back closer to their home market. And what that means is within your local market, you have even greater competition for survival. The other challenge or the opportunity of that coin we'll talk about as is that Parisian distiller was expanding into UK, et cetera, they're not there any longer. So the ability to have less outside competition is also positive. We'll talk a little bit more about that. Greater customization, everything from, again, using what you can do, not what you can't do, that focus, and we'll talk a little bit about that as well. Greater customization. So while you may not have, 50 people on a tour or a day or, 10 people at a time, what you can do is offer greater customization because we as human beings are social creatures and we're constantly seeking out experiences. So, custom barrel tastings or custom gin making, charging a premium for that, but less people. One of the things we've been really focused on with our clients is doing more with less. So while the people aren't there, the dollars haven't really disappeared. It's just their ability to interact with you. So greater customization, custom gins, custom experiences, one-on-ones or group of friends, families, et cetera. This ability to really innovate within your four walls, not to mention through an account, is starting to happen. And also greater opportunities for direct-to-consumer. In some countries, this was already legal, but a good majority, the US in particular, was not. But even where it is legal, the consumer mindset shift from going into the retailer to buying online, be it Amazon, et cetera, we're starting to change consumer behavior. So this opportunity for a distiller to compete in another market as the consumer has become more comfortable purchasing through direct-to-consumer routes, this could be really great. And our wine brethren have been excellent at this. And so getting the mindset shift change to spirits, not to mention laws, can be game changer. In any event, all this to say, as time has gone on, the bar has been raised yet again. The ability to just hang up a shingle and call yourself the craft distiller, that disappeared about 10 years ago. Then we talked about greater liquid and greater packaging and greater service. But now the competition is even more intense. And so this means that as you're thinking about launching your business, you have to be even smarter. You have to be even more savvy, and you have to be even more of a concept of what I'll refer to as an insurgent's mission. Really looking at this as a business and a competitive one at that. And the barriers to enter and what it's going to require to be successful are increasing. And I think COVID, the pandemic, have increased that even more so. So all that to suffice to say, what do I do with this? Now, as I shared, no matter where you fall in the channel, distributor, retailer, supplier, importer, broker, etc., you're affected by this. And the ability to work through this is going to be a challenge. However, focusing on what you can't do, not what you can't do, and looking at what this landscape is going to be, how can we start to think and plan through this? So with all that, looking through what opportunities may be. Full acquisitions. So if you're thinking about entering the space, if you're thinking about buying a larger company, let's say you're in the financial wherewithal or there's a company that you really admire, the ability to do full acquisitions are showing themselves. What I'll say is we get about 2 to 3 phone calls a month of people looking to be put on the market, companies that I'm very surprised that are thinking this way. But their ability or desire to want to compete or to keep going has changed. Some of the fun has been removed. So being able to look at fully acquiring a business that's existing, maybe it's one that's only a year old. They've done all the hard work of setting up, getting established, building a brand. You may be able to acquire them and at a very fair price. Brand acquisitions. So looking at maybe just buying a brand, maybe there's no need to buy their whole business, but you like the brand that they have. This true goes for larger companies, but looking at an individual brand, maybe there's a whiskey brand, maybe you're making whiskey, but your whiskey isn't quite old enough, but there is a brand that's 5 years ahead of you. Maybe that whiskey brand's for sale now. Aging inventory. Many companies know that one of their greatest assets is their inventory, and this could be an opportunity for you to acquire some or all of that inventory and using it for your own label or your own brand. With that, of course, I always encourage full transparency. But if you know of a distillery that's been pumping out liquid and really aging it, maybe you can take off 100 barrels or two from their inventory and allow you to have something to compete. There's a lot of aging inventory floating around, particularly in the US, where companies have really been building up inventory, but not having a home now because of lower sales for that inventory to go. And then equipment. With this, some of these businesses, unfortunately, will not survive. And the equipment that they purchase is great equipment, distillation equipment, especially stuff from like iStill, et cetera, is very well made, and you have the ability to take it on for yourself, perhaps at a discount. And maybe if it's not a still, it's all the ancillary support equipment, such as chillers, boilers, bottling lines, et cetera. So being mindful that there's opportunities out there for resources. And then lastly, maybe it's a shell business. Maybe you purchase a business just for their licenses or their relationships with distributors. It's not unusual for those distributor relationships to be worth incredible value, especially as I mentioned previously, that getting distribution from the start is really difficult at the moment. Maybe there's a business where you're not overly impressed with the brands or the liquid, but you do love how they have a license, that they're established, and have relationships. And lastly, talent. Again, there's a lot of great people in this industry, and even the large companies have been furloughing a lot of their staff. In addition, this industry pays very well, and not to take advantage of somebody's shortfall or heartache or troubles, but being able to hire somebody, perhaps even at a better rate than where you could have 12 months ago, is out there. Okay. Scott, you seem like a straight shooter. You certainly have perspective on the industry and where things are going on. Do I stop? Do I hold things off? What do we do? By the way, I'm already about to open. So I think you should ask yourself 4 questions. If you're thinking about going forward, if this is a passion, investment, or a hobby. If this is a hobby, you should stop. You should stop, period, even pre-pandemic, post-pandemic. This is not a hobby business. While it's lots of fun, there's certainly lots of beautiful experiences with this business. It is far too competitive and capital intensive for it to be treated as an occasional hobby. If it's an investment, this is an incredible time to be looking through it, because the ability to have a greater return in time, not to mention to acquire greater assets, is an excellent opportunity for investment. And if this is a true passion, if this is a real calling, that is what's getting most of these companies through it, their internal drive to get them through. So if you have that passion and you understand that this is a business, I would still look to proceed. What does success look like? This is the first question we always ask after we start working with somebody. Where is it that you'd like to take it? Is this something that's being built up for generations ahead? Is this something that you're looking to exit and make a nice return? Is this something that is just a change in desire of hobby? Again, hopefully we've avoided that before we've gotten to this stage. But whether you're looking to hand this down or exit period, it's important to know what that is and understand if your opportunity or the desire for success is really viable right now, right? So if you're looking to flip a business today, again, nothing wrong with that. The ability for the M&A market is much lower. So it'd be much more imperative to you perhaps to be looking at a business to acquire versus trying to start from scratch. Am I willing to do what it takes? For those of us who haven't started yet, this is a wonderful opportunity to test their theories. You know, what would have happened if I would have opened my business today? Was the location that I thought was absolutely amazing for success a ghost town today? If I was counting for export, what does the export market look like? If I thought I was going to charge, you know, a super premium price point for that liquid, would that still sell in today's time? So understanding and doing a stress test on a hypothetical model is there, and knowing the heartache that many of these owner-operators are facing. Am I willing to see through it? Do I have the leadership capability to want to do this? And lastly, can I stomach the downside? If everything were to be going on as it was, and I were to have failed, could I have taken that risk? Could I have lost that money? What if it took another 24 months to turn the corner for profitability? And can I afford that? Can I afford that mentally and physically and financially? So once you've gotten through these four things, then I really know for certain that this is the right investment for you to pursue. So with that, we have something at Thoroughbred we call the go, no-go decision process. And that is a stage gate process to really stress test and prove that what you want to do is viable. The first thing is a feasibility study. This basically encompasses around defining the concept in the business, both personally and professionally, as well as financially. So through a virtual meeting today, we go through extensive questions and challenging, the idea and really refining it, and then building a really detailed financial model around it. Many financial models are a couple of spreadsheets that all go like this. That's great, but many of those businesses are in trouble because they didn't take extensive time to plan through everything. So when we build a model, it's roughly 60 spreadsheets that covers 5 years of every facet of the business. You know, everything from on-site sales to off-site sales to productions to margin to aging inventory to sales to salaries, not to mention changing environments by country. So you really need to be able to build that. Once you build that, then you stress test it. Well, what happens if COVID lasts another 12 months? What happens if the on-premise goes down another 20%? What happens if the price point that people were normally willing to pay was 40 pounds a bottle goes down to 35 pounds? All that has extensive insight and effect into your business. So assuming you like the financial model and that you're comfortable with those risks financially, then you get into some of the fun stuff. The next phase is we design the packaging, so taking the name and then creating the brand and label all behind it. Key thing with this is always trademark. No matter where you are in the world. The second most difficult thing in the spirits business is to find a name you like that isn't already trademarked. The first one is often raising capital, by the way. But making sure that you have that trademark well protected. And if you have ideas of expanding beyond your country, looking for trademarks in other countries as well. The last thing you want to do is rebrand in another market you plan to be in. Then we also focusing on liquid development, so working with our distillers or an existing distillery to help develop your gin recipe or whiskey recipe or your pour, etc. And then we market test. So when you develop the packaging, you develop a physical prototype, you fill it with this liquid, and we bring it to market. We show it to retailers, you show it to distributors, you show it to industry taste makers, and you find out what people really think about the brand. Hey, this is beautiful. This is really exciting. I can see what you're doing with this whiskey, how it's really different than everything else. But you told me earlier that the price point was 50 pounds. You know what? All of our whiskeys that are 50 pounds and above are really struggling right now. The really good price point is 35 pounds. Can you make that margin? Oh, I don't think I can do it. This is really nice, but this tastes just like every other gin that we have right now. How are you going to stick out on the shelf? This is really great, but I can't read it. It's too hard to understand. I can't see it in a darkly lit bar. Not that we would let that happen, by the way, but you get the point as you're figuring all this through. And when it comes to the accounts and retailers, if they have buy-in, then you can really know that you have something. If a retailer, distributor, account is willing to, on-premise account is willing to buy your product or be willing to buy your product under these circumstances, then you know you have something. Because just imagine how it will be, and hopefully in the next 12 months, when things start to go back to normal, how much even more willing they'll be able to buy something. So again, market testing, stress testing, stage gate process, really prove and define the idea. By this stage, you know your numbers, you know what it looks like, you know what it tastes like, and you know what people think about it. At this stage, there's nothing else you can do until you start to pull the trigger and move forward. However, if one of these 4 things tests poorly, you have plenty of time right now to make changes and to edit it. Or perhaps this shows you that this isn't a good idea and the risk is just too great, and so you stop. While certainly this is an investment, it's a heck of a lot less than going about it without it. And for those of you who want to do this anyway, you know, you're gung-ho, you have the finances, you want to make this work, now is the time to really take your time and plan through this. So we take everyone through this process, whether they're 100% funded or they're just trying to make sure this is the right idea. Taking the time to refine through all of these processes, especially right now, is a very wise thing to do. So, key success factors. Without question, this is an industry that requires great capital, and even more so now. And more importantly, it requires this amazing thing called patient capital. Ability to reinvest when things aren't going well outside of the control of the operator. But just imagine if you tapped out your investment network and you needed another 6 months of capital to see it through, and your network doesn't have it. You're either going to really overpay for that capital, or you're going to become in a really awful position because you got so close. So we always recommend over-capitalizing the business. And the reason is for opportunities, because you need to fund those. And you certainly need to fund risks like the ones we're in now. So making sure you have extensive access to capital and that you're overfunded. Industry know-how. Again, as mentioned, the bar has been raised. Working with true experts who really know this space, hiring people who are experienced salespeople or marketing people or production people. The days of letting yourself learn the business as you go, fake it till you make it kind of concept, that is well over, because the competition is super fierce, and the distributors, suppliers, and retailers and the rest of the trade are knowing how to spot the genuine article. And their ability to be patient or to take a risk on a startup is much less. So having true pros on your side and in your company is vital. Unique position. As this change has happened, more power has also, by the way, gone to the consumer. So, because we're chasing for fewer dollars, the unique position, having something truly unique, meaningful, unique. Yes, I'm a London dry style gin. That's great. There's 400 of them. But here's why we're different. Here's our purpose. Here's our flavor passion. Here's what our brand is about. Having something that truly, truly sticks out is vital. And then with this, before you could get away with a good product and mediocre packaging, or excellent product and a mediocre liquid, that's gone. Now it requires both. Excellent product, excellent packaging. The reality is rarely is the best tasting product the best seller, but now consumers are so focused on both things being truly fantastic, you really need to focus on both. And then, as always was important, this advice came from my grandfather, who was the third generation distiller, who I learned from. He had a phrase in his Italian accent, which was, think beyond the still. And this is the concept that what happens in there is magical, but this is a business. And focusing on the commercial side or the business side of the business is vital. And knowing that it's not just about the product anymore, and to being able to think strategically out in the marketplace, outside of the four walls. And right now, reality inside the four walls as well, thinking of it like a business. It's a beautiful, wonderful product to make, and it's a privilege to do so, but it requires equal business acumen. So, Sebastian, how about we pause there, and I'll ask for some Q&A for anybody who has follow-up questions or would like to ask anything. We'd love to be helpful. So please feel free to call us below in the States, the 312 number, or info@tvspirits.com.
Do you see any differences between the United States and other continents like Europe, Australia, in what's happening now with the craft industry?
Sure. In a lot of ways, there's a lot of similarities. As I mentioned in the presentation, this is affecting every tier. It's really affecting every country as well. The concept of we're all in this together. Certain countries have it far greater restrictions. So, bars, their ability to interact with consumers. In the markets that you mentioned that are more open to direct consumer sales, they're really taking advantage of that. So China, Singapore, Australia, UK, heavy focus on, just so everybody knows it, channels like Amazon, dealing direct to consumer, et cetera, really getting out there and pushing their brands through the other channel. But pretty much everyone around the world in this space is, one, their ability to be influential at the distributor or retailer is lower, for the craft artisanal movement. Bars, restaurants, depending on where you are in the world and where the infection numbers are at, some are completely closed, some are at 25% capacity. So it's really, really universal in a lot of the influences and challenges.
Okay, thank you. Also, I can imagine some of the craft distillers now getting into trouble because of the whole pandemic going on, and maybe even thinking, well, let's go into some sort of hibernation and wait it all out. I'm not going to produce anything because that's costing me money at the moment. I'm just suspending everything and see if I can get back to the market when it's all over. Is that the strategy you would advise?
Gosh, it depends on the business. If you're really self-funding it, and I think you're in the entry stages, kind of having a relaunch might make sense. But if you are looking from an existing company, the pulling back, the concept is you have to survive another day. The challenge now is that those days keep going on and on and on. So would I recommend burning through all your cash to stay afloat? No, not if listen, if you realistically have 2 months ahead of you, conserve that cash, right? Hold on to it, put things away, make sure all your debts are paid, et cetera. Highly communicate. One thing I'd like to share in a little bit here about leading through this as an operator perspective. But if you have the ability to keep going, if you pull back, many of the consumers or trade, and particularly distributors, will look at that as weakness and put even less effort behind you. So one of the things that we really encourage suppliers to say, distillers to say, is to be transparent with your suppliers about your power. Don't hold that, because many of them are making the assumption that you're not going to see it through it. So communicate the otherwise if it's true. And so let them know that you're still going to be around. So don't let them force you out. Make sure that you have the ability to fight through. But to answer your question very directly, I wouldn't waste my last dollar trying to keep my doors open. Hold on to that, fight another day. And that might be in 6 months, that might be in a year. But certainly surviving is key.
Okay. Do you think the landscape, the whole industry, is going to be changed forever because of what's happening now?
Change forever. I hope in some ways that the operators will will think more strategically, which is good, which will allow them to be better from a business perspective. I think some of this sounds really terrible, and I'm acknowledging that up front. There are some distillers or businesses in the space that really aren't focused on liquid, really aren't treating this like a real business. This pandemic is forcing their hand. And so, again, I mentioned the bar being raised. I think it's going to mean overall a better, stronger product for the consumer and the trade as a whole. Because one of the risks to craft distillers is that unfortunately there's a lot of bad product out there. And one of the things I always mention is that we are responsible. So if I release a whiskey that I know really isn't quite ready yet, but I need to get out there, or I want to compete, and then I get a consumer to try a craft spirit versus what they would normally go to for Johnny Walker or whatever it may be, or a Maker's Mark bourbon, and I try this and it's not good, and it's knowingly not good, my desire to try another craft spirit is greatly diminished. So with this, I think overall the industry is going to be stronger, smaller, but stronger from that perspective. I'm also hopeful that in markets where direct-to-consumer or especially on-site retail is not a massive opportunity or not even a massive concept, that'll change, because that ability for distillers to compete directly or even cater directly to the consumer, that could be the game changer.
Okay. So let's dive into your company. I can imagine there are now some people watching and thinking, well, I'm getting into trouble or I'm experiencing some trouble. Can they reach out to you? Or because you took us through the whole process of starting up a company and how you help people to achieve their goals there. But if people are in trouble now at the moment, can they reach out to you and your company for advice?
Of course. We have a ethos at Thoroughbred, which is professionalism and grace, and our purpose is to be a crucial contributor to an individual and organization success. So I share that because if you're in a position where you're really struggling, I want to be helpful. We have a unique ability of knowing this space really well. And if there's something that's challenging you and I can help save your business or help save your family or your finances, even if we don't engage together on a working relationship, we want to have that conversation, truly. For those of you who are looking to work with us, we have two types of clients, those that are looking to start as well as those looking to get to the next level. The first one is never too soon. As long as you have the idea, working with someone to guide you through all the parts is what we do. And then the businesses that are looking to grow, they're typically 3 to 10 years of age, have some ideas of things that are going really well, or maybe they're really having some real challenges. Those are our favorite ones to work on. The more hairy the challenge, the better, because I think it gives even more purpose to what we do. But yeah, we help in every various facet. But again, if somebody is really struggling, I'm not looking for dollars. I'd love to be helpful and have a conversation.
Great. Okay. I think it's actually the first time in this series we're talking to someone who's not a distiller, although you just told us you're from a distiller's family and a distiller's background. So what inspired you to start this company?
Thank you for that. Well, I'll try to do the short version. So essentially, when I had my second business, we were looking for a strategic buyer. And this was 2008, 2009. And so it wasn't the best time then. Not that I'm trying to compare both time periods, but certainly stressful. And we knew that if we really were going to break through, we needed strategic capital. So we ended up talking to Brown-Forman. Brown-Forman is a great company, owns Jack Daniel's, Southern Comfort at the time, Herradura Tequila, et cetera. And I'll derail this for 30 seconds. And essentially, we were going back and forth, and we're based in Atlanta at the time, and we're flying into Louisville to meet with the CEO, which is my version of Michael Jordan of Brown-Forman, and the head of M&A. And after about 30 seconds of pleasantries in that meeting, the head of M&A, who came from Nestle Waters, said, having a hard time putting a value on your business. We were doing about 10 million in revenue, but he goes, essentially, you're a rounding error to us, which in reality is true, but heartbreaking to hear as an entrepreneur. And he said, he goes, we're just not sure how to pick you in. And I said, well, listen, I know I need additional capital and influence at the distributor channel. What if we were an incubator within Brown-Forman? We are good at putting all the pieces together and building brands and taking them to market, but we need greater influence. And they loved it. And that's a long story where the name Thoroughbred comes from, and I won't bore us with that. But essentially, the corollary comes from thoroughbred horses require effort, time, energy, and money. But when they hit, they hit. And it's very similar to horse spirit brands. And Brown-Forman likes horses. So I was half pandering to them. In any event, we ended up getting an all-cash offer from another group, so we sold. But the idea stuck with me. And as I mentioned earlier, putting the pieces together. I'm not an expert in everything. I'm very grateful for my colleagues that are experts in the various facets. But knowing how looking at the business from a full perspective, thinking beyond the still, as my grandfather taught me, is crucial. And so I've learned that, again, helping someone else succeed is my version of success. And I love this space, so that's why we got started. I'm grateful to keep doing it.
And are you basically working in the US or also taking on clients from all over the world?
We're pretty universal, mostly in the US. About 70% of our business is in the US. We do work throughout the UK and Europe, Australia, and we have 2 projects in China, and then some work throughout the Caribbean.
Okay, you mentioned you think that one of the most important things is getting the product on a higher level. The bar is raised and products really, really need to be good. You also mentioned you have some master distillers that work for you. People can get some advice there, like we do. So do you think that's the way forward for businesses at the moment, just to make sure the product is incredibly good?
Without question. One of the traps is if the liquid isn't there. The packaging can get them the first time, the story, the emotion. And one of my great stories is that, when you go to Napa, California, which is beautiful, and they are absolute pros at guest experiences, hospitality experiences. And you go there and the wine is amazing, the environment, you're looking off at the vineyards, and somebody offers you, some little dessert, and you're like, oh my God, this is heaven. And then you buy a case. And then you come back home to Indiana and you're sitting in your kitchen, looking at your neighbor's shed, and the wine isn't as good. And the reality is it's not, because you got part of what made it taste so good was all the experience around it. That's packaging. And so having the great liquid to keep coming back is vital. And as part of the advantage of this craft movement is that consumers are getting more educated and interested. And so they're really taking notes. And you want to be the product that is the really trusted go-to. For me, that's Eagle Rare and other products that our clients make, obviously. But on a national basis, if I'm in a bar and they don't carry one of our clients' brands, I order Eagle Rare because it's a 10-year-old bourbon for $30 and it's really good. It's hard to beat, right? That's the emotional versus rational benefit. And so having excellent liquid, and the concept is often for a chef, if you've never really cooked before, like really cooked, thinking you're going to make a Michelin star meal out of the gate is kind of blasphemous, right? So working with somebody who really has the skills and the knowledge to train you and to learn it, I think that's just smart. So yeah, without question, working with experts. Again, I'm not an expert in everything. This is a very, very nuanced business. So understanding where your skill sets are, and even if you are really great with your palate and flavors, working with somebody who can teach you a few tricks of trade, they'll make your product even better. So yeah, highly recommended.
So I can imagine some people around the world now are struggling with their businesses, struggling with decisions they need to make. Do you have any advice for them?
Yeah, that's, I think, probably the real crucial question. And if you are the operator, if you are the entrepreneur, or you're in a leadership capacity, you have a massive opportunity and a massive responsibility to be helpful to your staff and your colleagues. Far often, you are their leader and how they think and how they can get through this. So taking the responsibility that your role comes with, that you've been given, right? The stewardship that you've been allowed, and to be helpful to them. Really try to connect with them on a personal level and to share with them how you're thinking. They will often apply your thinking to their personal life and their personal families. So being transparent with them, sharing with them how the business is really doing, being transparent about how much longer you can afford to pay them or not pay them, so that they can make decisions, but also to provide that really unique ability of comfort and leadership. And you don't have to know everything. No great leader knows everything. And even saying that helps make you a great leader. So being able to connect and communicate more than ever is vital. Use that leadership position you've been entrusted with to great advantage.
It is my difficult question for you, but I ask it on every interview. If there's just one thing that you could give as an advice to a starting craft distiller, what would it be?
Starting advice. Gosh, what to narrow it down to. I think the 4 questions I mentioned, those are the key things to really think through. Making sure you're really confident in those 4. The overarching thing, though, is making sure that you're well capitalized. Too many businesses are falling short because they're undercapitalized, and often they're undercapitalized because they didn't properly plan. And it's one of the great things about this industry, as I mentioned, is full of passion, full of interest. But often it lacks with passion is patience. One of the things I know for certain is this industry is not going anywhere. And over time, as we've had challenges, pandemic, economic challenges, environmental challenges, spirits industry as a whole is not recession resistant, it's recession resilient. So having a smart place to put your money or time, this is one of the industries. But taking the time to plan appropriately, making sure that you really have the capital to see you through. Again, it's not only the downside, but it's the opportunity side. So really having a solid plan and the capital that supports it is vital, absolutely vital.
I think that's a very good conclusion. Thank you very much for the interview. Thank you very much for the, thorough, it's in your brand name already, for the thorough presentation that you gave. And if you have any questions for Scott, please leave them in the comments and we will make sure that he gets them and they will be able to answer you. Thank you very much. And I hope to see you again soon.
Thank you, Sebastian. Best of luck to everybody. Appreciate it. Bye-bye.